I'll now announce the verdict. In the state of Georgia versus Jose Antonio Ibarra, case SU 24-CR-0323, count 1, malice murder. I find the defendant guilty. Count 2, felony murder. I find the defendant guilty. Count 3, felony murder. I find the defendant guilty. Count 4, felony murder. I find the defendant guilty. Count 5, kidnapping with bodily injury. I find the defendant guilty. Count 6, aggravated assault with intent to rape. I find the defendant guilty. Count 7, aggravated battery. I find the defendant guilty. Count 8, obstructing or hindering a 911 call. I find the defendant guilty. Count 9, tampering with evidence. I find the defendant guilty. Count 10, peeping Tom. I find the defendant guilty.
All right, we just heard from the judge in the Laken Riley trial. His decision that Jose Ibarra is guilty of 10 counts, including 4 counts of murder. The judge very clear there. He was guilty of these 10 counts, the most serious being murder, 4 counts of that. Joey Jackson, our legal analyst, I want to bring you in. The judge announced his decision very quickly after closing arguments, and he says he is prepared to move forward with sentencing now.
Yeah, Pamela, it's not really surprising with respect to the verdict in terms of the guilt on all 10 charges. The evidence in this case was entirely overwhelming. That pointed to Jose Ibarra as the person who would now be a convicted felon for having engaged in this heinous act. Specifically, I think that what happened is the prosecution put on a case where you don't listen to what we say, but look at what the evidence shows. And the evidence showed in terms of technology, his phone being at that location, her phone, the smartphone that she had, indicating it's stopping at a specific time on the trail, being dragged into the woods at a specific point in time. In addition to that, the scratches that Mr. Ibarra had on him, not explainable, only if it related to, could explain it if it relates to what the allegation was, and now what the fact has been proven, that he was attempting to rape and kidnap her, etc., because the fingernails of Laken Riley, underneath them were his DNA. The jacket that he had that was thrown in the dumpster with respect to him leaving the particular scene, having blood and hair fibers on him. So not surprising in terms of the verdict. And, you know, I thought maybe it would take a little bit longer, but the judge explained, when I say longer in terms of the deliberation, the judge explaining that, saying, look, all throughout this case, I've taken copious notes with regard to listening to everything. And in closing argument, I simply absorbed it and wrote down a couple of things. Number one, the overwhelming nature of the evidence. Number two, separating my emotion from the equation. I think the judge did both of that, and if you follow the trial closely, Pamela, it's very clear that the judge got it right.
And you heard the crying, I think, in the background. It sounded like sobs, and you have to think about Laken Riley's family members, her mom, who has been sitting in on this trial, looking at all of this evidence and how emotional this must be for her, right? We know part of the evidence that was laid out was that Laken Riley had called her when she started her run, and the mom missed the call and called her back when it was too late after that 911 call. And the prosecution really laying out the case in the closing arguments today that Laken Riley and the fight for her life gave all the evidence needed to convict Jose Ibarra of this, with that DNA under her fingernails. Now we're waiting for the sentencing. There's a break right now that the judge has announced, and then he's ready, he said, for the sentencing. What does Jose Ibarra face?
Yeah, Pamela, to your point, I could not imagine, what the family certainly is going through and has gone through. And to your very core and important and excellent point, the bottom line is that when a mom is calling her on that day, them showing the prosecution the litany of text messages and the phone calls, hey, I'm getting worried, I'm getting nervous, where are you? And so, yes, very significant testimony, and certainly impactful and emotional testimony. In terms of where we go to next, the state has been asking for life without the possibility of parole, and I think that's exactly what they'll get. Now, we have multiple charges here, as we know. We saw the judge lay out the 10, including including the malice murder, premeditated murder, felony murder, murder committed in commission of a felony, the battery in terms of the rocks to the head, the strangulation, etc., the peeping Tom. Wow. But I think that's exactly what they'll get here when the judge renders sentencing. I know they're coming back at 12:30 to do just that, but that's the sentence that he's facing, and that's the sentence I think the judge will impose, Pamela.
All right, Rafael Romo is here with us now. He was in the courtroom when the judge's decision was read. Bring us in. You could just hear the emotion in that room, Rafael.
In 3 decades of being a journalist, Pam, I have to say that it's been by far the most emotional moment that I have lived inside a courtroom. And that's because as each one of the counts was being read by the judge, you could hear, audibly hear sobbing, loud sobbing from the family, from Laken Riley's mother, Allison Phillips, from her sister, from extended family. We counted more than 20 people between family, classmates, friends of Laken Riley, who were here in the courthouse, inside the courtroom every single day, every single hour of the 3.5 days of testimony. And let me tell you, it was a very powerful case for the prosecution. They introduced 25 witnesses compared to 3 from the defense. And in the end, the defense made a very brave effort to try to distract from the overwhelming evidence, because let's remember, there was physical evidence, there was digital evidence, there was DNA evidence, there were fingerprints, and the defense was trying to say that there was an alternative theories, or several theories of them, saying that it was possibly the brother, Diego Ibarra, who's also in federal custody under violation of immigration documents, presenting essentially a fake document, but it was no use. And again, on all 10 counts, Judge H. Patrick Haggard found the defendant guilty. Again, it is a trial it is a case that we've been following for the last 9 months, because not only how gruesome, how heinous the nature of the crime was, but also because it was at the center of a national debate about crime and immigration, and today we have the resolution. Right now, the judge has called for a recess, about an hour and a half, after which we are expected to hear the sentencing. It's probably going to be no surprise, Pam, because the prosecution had asked for life in prison without parole. There were many calls to make this a death penalty case, but the prosecution decided not to go that route. But again, a very powerful, very emotional moment, and you can feel for the family of Laken Riley, especially because they had to endure, essentially relive every single moment, the last minutes of Laken Riley's life, and one can only imagine how hard, how difficult that must have been for them, Pam.
Our hearts go out to her family. I mean, you know, look, her murderer, now found guilty of these 10 counts by the judge, but you'll never be able to bring her back to life, and it's just so deeply heartbreaking for the family. Thank you so much, Rafael Romo.